everyone. This is William del Pilar, your conservative Latino, and Big Girthy John. And tonight we are here to talk about some NBA, some NFL free agency, some Razor Ramon, may he rest in peace, along with Carl Nassib and where does the LGBTQ, everything else representative go from here? So Big John, it's good to have you on. Apologies, my friends. I did forget our big guest today. Our big guest is Dennis Velasco, Mr. Lucha Libre himself, Mr. Former Sports Grumblings.
Yes,
Mr. Man, the myth, the legend, the Asian eighth wonder of the world.
Yeah, he's done it all, more or less, William. He may have even done it twice. Dennis, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Now, I heard that I was big. Like, are you hearing something from females? Like, you know, I got in the boxers or what?
He heard it from me. He heard it from me.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, then we know it's true.
But keep that on the D-Lo. There's a lot of Trump supporters watching us.
Oh, I got
on the D-Lo.
I think that's just a libertarian projecting. For the fans out there, Dennis Velasco is the EIC of Nerd Fantasy Sports. That is editor-in-chief. He's contributed fantasy basketball content to Sports Illustrated and The Score, and regular NBA content to Yahoo, Slam, SB Nation's Nets Daily, ESPN's True Hoop Network, and many other hoop destinations on the internet. He's the founder of Hardwood and Hollywood, which was a Fox Sports partner, and currently a Complex/BuzzFeed publishing partner. Everyone, let's welcome Dennis Velasco.
By the way, William, you forgot the most important part of his bio. He is one of the original Sports Grumblings writer staff as well.
Oh, that is true. That is true. Were you the one plagiarizing, Dennis?
Oh, no, definitely not. That wasn't me. That was Jesse Smollett. That was.
I'm kidding. Jesse. It was.
He never got a call from Matt Berry. I never got a call about him from Matt Berry.
Well, with that, let's get right on into it. We know, Dennis, you are a busy man, and it is the East Coast, and I am on the West Coast, so I'm keeping you up a little late. First of all, the trade, a quick review of this trade of the Brooklyn Nets and the Philadelphia 76ers with Harden and Simmons.
Yeah, so, that happened a little bit ago. James Harden went from the Brooklyn Nets along with Paul Millsap to the Philadelphia 76ers, and in return, the Nets received Ben Simmons, who hasn't played all year and still hasn't, Seth Curry, who's played really well for the Nets, and Andre Drummond, who also has been playing really well for the Nets. Obviously, top talent gets the job done. James Harden, since joining the 76ers, has been kicking butt. But, you wouldn't expect anything less. He's one of the top 75 players of all time for a reason.
Well, with the trade, did Ben Simmons get on the court for this matchup? For the folks out there, we're going to break down and talk a little bit about the Brooklyn Nets' literal destruction of the Philadelphia 76ers in their first meeting. Real quick note here, the Nets didn't they also acquire 2 first-round picks?
Oh, yeah, they acquired the draft picks, but draft picks at this point really don't matter because, the Nets are trying to just win now. And the way that the general manager, Sean Marks, works, he always uses draft capital for, big trades. So that's why a lot of them will be like second rounders. And you think, oh, who can you get in the second round? Well, you never know who you can get in the second round. So that's why, you never know. So Sean Marks is known for using that to get established players or whatever they need.
Well, that's how it should be. Draft picks as commodities. I'm sure JTG will agree. In fantasy football, any fantasy sport, us long-time old-timers love using those as commodities to get who we want and move up or down. Just common sense. All right, Dennis. For those who did not watch the game, was Ben Simmons able to get into this game?
No, his back is still hurting like an old man. So that's been the problem. And actually, it's been a problem for a while now. Whenever he's been injured, it's usually been his back. And the fact that he hasn't played all year, it's just made it worse. So once he joined the Nets, they were just working on his back. They have markers to figure out, like, okay, he's done with one-on-one, individual work. Now he can start playing 5-on-5. That hasn't happened yet. So obviously there's something going on with his back still. They were hoping that he can come back this week, but that's not happening. Now the best hope for the Brooklyn Nets and their fans are for him to play like a game or two before the playoffs start. If you ask me, I don't think it's going to happen, but you never know.
Well, what do they say is wrong specifically with his back? Do you know? Because he hasn't played for well over a year now, and to still have back problems like that speaks to the seriousness or potential of.
Yeah, well, some of that flares up every now and then. I think it's his L5 that's been hurting. So, we'll see what happens. It's, in his lower back. And, if you've played any sport, which I believe you guys have, like when your back goes out, it does not help you with your athletic performance. So
as you age, you kind of see the realities of that. And for those of you who've never had back pain, you literally cannot do anything because that back is involved in every moment. I remember in military training one time, my back just seized up and that was all she wrote. And I was so bummed out at the situation because, like I just said, there's absolutely nothing. It's not like you can fight through it. You just have to deal with it and rest.
Well, that's the other thing, William. When your back hurts, you can't get good rest. Like you can't sleep, you can't sit, you can't stand. It's like every position, if your back is really, really not aligned and not working right, that's the worst part, I think. Like you might be able to play through the pain and whatnot, but the fact that you can't sleep and that you can't rest enough for an athlete, I would think that would be even worse. We're not talking about a neck injury, but it's still, I think that is something most people don't consider. And I think that's like very key.
Yeah, the back is one of those delicate issues. If you can play through back pain, you don't have back pain. That's my
well, yeah, maybe. Yeah, I hear you.
So, Dennis, Ben Simmons didn't embrace any 76ers players. Is there still animosity there? He did embrace at halftime or do fist bumps with Doc Rivers at halftime, but wasn't Rivers part of the issues and part of the personnel / staff that wanted him out?
Well, with Doc Rivers, he's like one of the legendary coaches in the NBA. I believe he was named top 10 head coach, which I don't know if that's true personally. But, he's well respected. And I'm sure that even though Doc Rivers was part of the problem, calling him out, he didn't troll him or disparage him as bad as Joel Embiid did. So the real issue is Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. I don't think Ben Simmons is going to burn that bridge with Doc Rivers because you never know. Because Doc Rivers, maybe he joins the Nets or both of them go to another organization. But as far as like players, yeah, the pettiness, it stays for a long time, and, there's a current one between Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. And it's like, you guys are old, man. Come on. Just like, forget about it. But Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant, they had a long time, rivalry after Shaq left. Eventually they, became buddies, but, it usually takes a while. So considering that Simmons and Embiid, this just happened, will they ever be friends? Maybe. Will they be cordial? I'm sure, but it's not going to be anytime soon. So the fact that Simmons is not like, giving a pound to anybody is not surprising.
I've got to digress here for a moment. Doc Rivers in the top 10. I mean, how many championships does he have as a head coach? I just don't see him anywhere near Pat Riley or
Right.
Oh my gosh, who's the great Boston Celtics head coach?
Red Auerbach.
It's like that's a disgrace to every actual multiple head coach title winner to sit there and put Doc Rivers in that. And you're right. I've never really seen any bad pub about Doc Rivers. He always comes across as well respected. And John, he was a player we saw play during our youth,
Yeah. And I think it's more just that people like Doc Rivers for the most part.
Yeah, no, he's a very positive guy, and every player that ever has played for him, loves him, and he gets a lot of credibility from those older players. For example, Kevin Garnett. Kevin Garnett goes, "Oh yeah, Doc Rivers is he's the man." People don't listen to Kevin Garnett. So, it's a matter of not only getting credibility through his coaching ability, but it's also from, top line Hall of Fame players.
Well, also as a former player, he has credibility too.
Right.
It's not like he's a coach who wasn't an NBA player. So there's a lot of respect that comes just from having done it. Because when someone who's done it is trying to tell you something, there's a certain amount of respect they get just for that. Like I used to say, people will say like, who's Trent Dilfer? Why would anyone care about Trent? Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl. I don't care if you won it with the best defense or not. He guided a team to the Super Bowl. You can't discount that. Was he the greatest quarterback? No. So it's the same thing I think with Doc Rivers. Like no matter what you may think of him, he played on the court. He was a good player, solid player in his career. So I would think that if he's on the court saying this is how you do a pick and roll and you're not doing it right, that commands, I think, a certain amount of respect from players, even the ones that weren't born, say, when he was on the court. So, so to that extent, yeah, but you're right. When you have Auerbach and Riley and Popovich and all these guys, is he top 10?
No, not
if
even
he
close.
is, he sneaks in at number 10 type of thing.
Hold on. That's John being kind, just like every report. I don't believe that he's a nice guy, but he's no. If he's top 10, then I'm King Kong. It's just an impossibility. But real quick, Trent Dilfer was the perfect quarterback for that team. At that point, Dilfer knew his limitations and was a game manager. And believe it or not, Ray Lewis has nothing but the utmost respect for him.
Right.
And I'm sure Dan Marino wouldn't mind a ring, unlike Dilfer, who has one. All righty, so it's a little bit of trash talk here. What did you think, Dennis, when the crowd started with the Boo Ben night and ended up going Ben Simmons? I mean, cheering him on at the end. Was that a nice touch, or was that part of the smack talk that's gonna grind on the 76ers players?
Well, I'll tell you this much: the people that were cheering for Ben Simmons, they were not Philly fans. there was actually a large contingent of Nets fans there, as some of them actually travel with the team when it's in the Northeast, visitor games.
I mean, that's a 3-hour ride to Philly. It's not like it's
right. It's not far at all.
Outrageous drive, yeah.
Right, but
this was like a playoff game in a way,
it definitely was. Shout out to the Brooklyn Brigade, real quick. But also, no, seriously, that's a group, Brooklyn Brigade. Shout out to them. And then as far as it being like a playoff game, I think it was like the fourth most sought after ticket, for the Sixers in their franchise history. It's ridiculous. It was like an all-time game.
Well, let's face it, Philly fans are well known throughout the world as being some of the most vicious fans on the planet. So I'm sure no one would pass up an opportunity to go crap on Ben Simmons after he was vocal about not wanting to play in Philly. Right. I mean, I'm sure all those Philly fans, Dennis, took it as a personal insult to them, not to the team, to them personally, like someone insulted their mothers. So I'm sure that, much like cheering when Michael Irvin got his career ended at the vet, I'm sure it'll be the same thing here. Like they were just like, can we throw batteries? Maybe, please, can we? That sort of thing.
Right. Well, there's two funny things that happened. So before the game, Ben Simmons came out to warm up. He was just warming up. He wasn't playing, obviously. And he dunked the ball. And that's when the Philly fans started on him, because that was the problem. He didn't dunk the ball during the playoffs against the Hawks. And that's how it all started with you were there for a dunk. Why are you passing the ball? So during warm-ups, he actually dunked the ball. And, of course, the Philly fans are going to go in on him for that.
I did read that, but your point to how it references is very good. Great catch there, Dennis. I love that one. You're right. That not dunk the dunk that never happened, I guess, was the beginning of the end for Ben Simmons in Philadelphia.
Oh yeah, I mean that was it right there, because immediately after, during the presser for that game, that's when it all started. Doc Rivers, Joel Embiid, and just saying stuff, and Ben Simmons. I'm a Nets fan, and I'm happy he's on my team, but it's like you gotta man up, man. It's like
I agree. I agree. There comes a time for these players to man up, especially somebody with Simmons' stature and expectations. All right, let's go to the other side. The big superstar James Harden only had 11 points that game. Can the Nets do this to him again if they meet down the road, or was this just a fluke? He was off, or do they have the ability to shut him down?
Well, they know how he plays, so they actually plan their defense really well against it. Well, can they do it every game in a 7-game series? Hell no. Can they do it 2 games out of 7? Maybe. But it's not something where you're going to clamp down James Harden. I mean, he's just too talented. He's one of the best scorers of all time for a reason.
Now, what if they got him? What if they got Harden free passes to the strip club the night before the game?
It wouldn't matter because James Harden has proven that he can stay out all night.
Even at this age, you think?
No, when he was young. When he was young.
No,
when he was young, when he was with Brooklyn, he came back all ragged, and I don't think they have an NBA Viagra for him ready to.
He's getting old, son. He's getting old, son. He can't do that anymore.
I think he can do it because, no, I was gonna say something very misogynistic.
Well, that's what LT used to do to his opponents, right?
I'll take him out.
No, he used to send hookers to their hotel room the night before the game. Like he admitted in one of his autobiographies, he admitted that he'd figure out who he was playing, like the key offensive guys, and he'd send prepaid hookers to their hotel rooms to keep them up all night.
So that's probably why LT took coke before the games to come back up after a night with hookers. Hey, but okay.
But real quick, what was funny is like immediately after the Nets beat the Sixers, James Harden, where was he? He was hanging out with 2 hip hop artists.
Oh, really?
Honestly, that's a reason I don't think he has a ring. Michael Jordan would be the first to chastise him on that, and to each their own and how they prepare. But he's been in the league a dozen years. You think, hey, and this goes for work, for sports, for anything in life. There's a time to clamp down when you're in the middle of doing something. And right now, he's on a stretch run to end the season, get a better seed, do well, et cetera, et cetera. Real quick. Speaking of the postseason, do you know James Harden's track record in the postseason? The reason I ask is dozen years, no championships. Is some of that attributed on his play? Does his play fall off come postseason?
No, I mean, I wouldn't say. I mean, he's a catalyst, for whatever team he's been on. He's been the reason they get anywhere. He's the reason they win anything. But he's basically just been like a one-man army, except for the time he had Chris Paul. They went pretty far, but I believe they lost in the Western Conference finals.
Well, I got to be honest. In team sports, a one-man show will never win it all. I mean, that I can think of. What about you, John?
It's extremely rare. I think the point is, especially in basketball, right? One player is 20% of your team at any given point. That's probably the highest of any team sport, right? So I think you get the superstar player, that means you're a playoff team. I think you can make the playoffs with the superstar player pretty consistently. Can you but to win the championship? Absolutely not. Because if nothing else, for those limited series where you see the same team 3, 5, 7 games in a row, they're going to make a concerted effort to say anyone else can beat us, but not the superstar. Right. So we don't care. Right. We don't care if we're tripling the superstar every time up and down the court. Let one of the scrubs beat us. That's fine, but we're not going to let the superstar. So that's why it's always important to have that second fiddle and a third fiddle to be able. They don't have to be anywhere near as good, but just enough so that the superstar isn't hounded 100% of the time. Dennis, right? I mean, I'm trying to think. Like Jordan obviously didn't get his rings until he got Pippen and Oakley and Rodman, right? Until those guys came into the fold, right?
Shaq didn't get his until he got with Kobe. Penny Hardaway just wasn't a factor in the playoffs enough to overcome two series.
Yeah, so you always need that. You need the superstar. I think is especially now, right? If for no other reason, the superstar becomes your selling point for free agents. And the way free agents are now, like I heard a story once. Someone I'm not sure if it was that they asked Bird or they asked Magic Johnson or somebody. They said back in your day, would you have gotten together with would Jordan, Bird, and Johnson gotten together and said, hey, let's all go to this one team so we could win the championship? And I think the person who was talking said, no, those three would probably stab each other if they were that close together in the offseason. Like there was such a competitive fire back then. We're talking 30, 40 years ago. There was such a competitive fire. There was no such thing as teaming up to win a championship. It was like, I'm winning it on my own. F you guys, eat my dust, right? So, but now.
Big John, though, you got to realize the salary cap has changed and has increased and has opened up and has created, I mean, we're talking massive salaries now. So you're able to do that. Back in the early days or when teams were building a nucleus or their strategy through the draft, that wasn't even thought of. Now it's a quick fix.
It was starting to, I mean, Dennis can hit me up. I mean, what's the exception to the cap? It's the Larry Bird rule. They did it. They created a rule just so the Celtics could keep Larry Bird. Okay, they created a rule for him. Okay, so it was happening back then. It just wasn't as prime. But I'm saying
that's the whole point. It was happening with limited players. Now you can literally look what the Houston Heat did. They brought in a whole bunch.
You mean the Miami Heat? But what I'm saying, no, what I meant to say is that the players themselves are not philosophically against teaming up. Like it used to be that each one of those guys thought they were the best. Jordan thought he was the best. Johnson thought he was the best. Bird thought he was the best. Jabbar thought he was the best. So those guys would never team up in order to get, like they wouldn't conspire to be on the same team in order to win the championship. They were out to win one themselves. So Dennis, I don't think you would ever get what we saw with Miami when they got LeBron and Dwayne Wade and who's the third guy?
Chris Bosh.
Chris Bosh, right? So you would never like, or where's the announcement? Let's have an announcement show of where LeBron is going. See, but now I think you do need to have that given today's NBA. So if you get the superstar player, like you have a James Harden, right? Or an Embiid, that becomes your PR move for getting the other free agents to come in, and they'll figure out a way to make the money work, right? So, because the NBA cap is really one of the most ridiculous caps in all of organized sports, right? Like for the most part, does the cap prevent anybody from signing anyone? Honestly, if a team is hell-bent on signing someone, Dennis, there's always exceptions.
You can go over the cap, you can go over the luxury cap, but you will pay. So let's say you're over the luxury cap. For every dollar you spend, the tax is $3. So if you're signing someone for $4 million, you're really signing for $12 million.
Right. So what you're saying is really, but it still benefits, say, big market teams or owners with deep pockets where they don't care as long as they get the championship, right, and then they get the marketing return on it. It's still a smart move. But in order to do that, you have to have a reason for these players to come to your team, like especially the ones that you feel are the keys to you winning, right? So
right. Theoretically,
yeah.
It doesn't always work.
But again, I still hold correct. It's so prevalent today because of the cap and the way it's been changed and the way it's used. And you're right. It may have been the Larry Bird rule that started it. But the final comment on that before I ask Dennis a couple more questions is that we're also in an era where free agency comes first. Before, in the old days, you were drafted by a team, became loyal. That team tried to keep you. Now it's, I've been drafted by this team. I've got X amount of years till I become a free agent and the big contract comes to me. So the loyalty is not there from day one, but it is there to their potential new contract and without a second stop. Plus, with the expansion, who wants to live in Toronto when LA beckons? That was a big draw for Shaq. Who wants to live in Orlando when I can go to LA in that world? But anyway, Dennis, Seth Curry and Andre Drummond, they were part of the big trade. How are they doing? You mentioned that they're doing pretty well.
Yeah, no, they're doing really well. I mean, the funny part about the Sixers trading Seth Curry or as I like to call him, TOC, the other Curry. So the funny part is the Nets needed a shooter. So they gave him one, Seth Curry. They needed a rebounder and an inside presence, and they gave him one in Andre Drummond. So it's sort of like, are you trying to win or are you trying to let the Nets win? If Ben Simmons ever comes back and he comes back healthy, you also gave him a defensive stopper. Now you have the best chemistry because you have two superstars that can score at will, basically. We saw Kyrie Irving drop 50. We saw Kevin Durant drop 53. We saw Kyrie Irving once again dropping 60 last night. You got scorers. So they didn't really need a James Harden. They needed a defensive stopper. And
I was going to say that. Yeah, that chemistry now seems a lot better, right? Like
assuming they have to be healthy and they have to.
That's what I'm saying. Assuming
theoretically,
Simmons, yes. Assuming Simmons comes back, assuming that Irving doesn't have to play in Brooklyn where he can't play because he's unvaccinated. It seems like the Nets really are better suited to winning now than when they had Harden. As goofy as that may sound, for the reasons you outlined, Dennis, I think the Nets are a stronger team now. Let's put it this way: they should be a stronger team come the playoffs, assuming Simmons is back, and at least for half the games, like we said. So when Kyrie Irving is not allowed in the building, right? Because the Nets got fined just for having him in the locker room in Brooklyn, I think, or it was at Madison Square Garden, right? So
no, it was ridiculous though.
Yeah, of course it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous because the rule makes no sense at this
point. It was at Barclays Center.
It wasn't Barclays. Okay, but my point is now, when Irvin is benched, which is for half the games basically, plus any games they play in Canada. Who steps in for him? And is he not the better fit, but is he a good fit for this revamped Nets?
Are you talking about Simmons fitting in?
No, I'm saying who steps in for Irving when he's on the bench?
Okay, so you can't replace a superstar player like that. So what's been happening is you have a Patty Mills, a Goran Dragic stepping up. You have someone like James Johnson stepping up, down in the forward spot. People are up in their game and scoring their points, but maybe they're adding 20 points, whereas Irving, he'll add 30. So, but it's a different type of game,
right?
When Irving's on the court, it's faster paced. The defense has to play Kevin Durant straight up.
Right.
If Irving is not on the court, they could double Kevin Durant easily. In fact, that was what the Dallas Mavericks were doing tonight. They were just jumping them. So instead of forcing the ball, the superstar KD is, I think he finished with 11 assists. He was finding an open man. So
that's the sign of a good team player, by the way, as well.
Oh no, he's an excellent team player.
I love Kevin Durant as a player. I like what he did in last year's playoff run, even though they fell short against the Bucks.
Yeah.
Oh man, I became a KD fan after that series, and maybe you could say, why did it take you so long? But I really tuned into him being a really great player, not just a good player. To William's point earlier, that's when Durant, in my mind, went from really good to effing great. Was that and it's funny how often that happens in defeat, right? Like Durant to me showed greatness in defeat, and what was it, a big toe on the line, and who knows how that series would have turned out, right?
So the shoe size was one size smaller.
Yes, exactly, or half a size smaller, right? Yeah.
They would have won with that three-pointer, but I mean, he's regarded as like one of the, not even one of, the best scorer in the NBA. You have Kareem, obviously, who has, the most points, but it was off of one shot. It was off the hook. Whereas Kevin Durant can score in a whole bunch of different ways. Short corner, 3-point line, taking it to the hoop.
Does it really matter if you couldn't stop the hook? It doesn't matter what his repertoire is.
That's what I'm saying.
All Kareem had to do was one shot.
Right. No, I mean, you could say that Kareem Abdul, he's the best scorer because he has the most points. But from the eye test, the skill wise, Kevin Durant, I mean.
No, I agree. It's just the old point it's like, well, if it wasn't for the fact that Tom Brady has 7 Super Bowls, he wouldn't be the GOAT. It's like, well,
Right.
it's one of those points that you really can't argue. Because I was the same way. I'm like, stop the shot. When I'd be rooting for the Celtics when they played them, and it was just next to impossible. But some teams did. Big John, it's good to see you coming to my side of things. I didn't say much because basketball's not my forte. But I thought the Nets got the better end of the deal because it's a team sport. But my logic was it was a bit flawed because I thought it'd be more Ben Simmons fitting in nicely. He hasn't stepped on the field, but the 2 pickups fitting in nicely with the team ball. And that's why I'm not shocked that Harden doesn't have, in my opinion, a title yet because he's an individual superstar. I don't think he's grasped the concept of a team sport in every facet, meaning on the field or on the court and off the court. Dennis, before we let you go.
Hold on a minute. I have to contest that because last year, when Harden was on the Nets, he was a great team player. He averaged
No, maybe, but did he stick around? Was he willing to stick around to see the fruition? That's part of the process of greatness. It doesn't come overnight.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Developed and he lost patience.
He did because Kyrie wasn't vaccinated because James Harden knows in order to win the title, he needed Kyrie next to him along with KD. So, that's the basic gist of why Harden wanted out because he does want the ring. He's hungry for the ring.
Well, every player is. But at the end of the day, greatness takes patience at times. And he didn't want to figure out a way to win with Kyrie Irving.
He's running out of time. That's the problem.
And right now, what's it look right now? Brooklyn or Philadelphia? They had to square out for 7 games. I'm being rhetorical, but my point is
everybody healthy?
But that's all professional leagues are a league of attrition. That's we can, if everybody was healthy at the start of the 2021 NFL season, would we be talking the refs giving the Rams the Super Bowl?
Right.
Anyway, though,
I would say if Kyrie Irving, because that's another if. In a 7-game series, I'd give it to the Sixers.
Okay.
Just because Simmons hasn't played yet. And Kyrie Irving can only play half the games. So.
Yeah, I do have a concern with Simmons. Y'all, I don't know if you're assuming, but I'm not assuming he's going to integrate into that offense smoothly. I mean, he's got a long way to go based off how he played the final series, almost 2 years ago now, and not playing with these guys and learning the chemistry, the nuances. I'm not so sure he's going to be able to fit in as quickly as people. I think he'll be more of a situational player, who they hope can contribute. I mean, he has some potential for more, but if you're winning and dominating, you can get Irving on the court, then why rock the boat? Actually, I'm wrong by saying not rock the boat. What I'm trying to say is, if he comes in and it takes time for the chemistry, I think you'll see the Nets pull him back into a situational role until they feel comfortable.
I think they'd start him, and I'll tell you why. Because he's played with Seth Curry before. Seth Curry starts. Ben Simmons only needs shooters around him, and he's going to have that. KD, Kyrie, Seth Curry, like I said. So his game has always been about his athleticism and his vision and his ability to run the floor. It's never about his half-court offense. And I think the Nets are smart enough to know, we're not running any sets for you because he's not going to do anything. But he will make them run.
Will he dunk? Will he dunk? That's the question.
That's the question now.
And don't forget, it's his defense too.
Right.
I mean,
that's what they really need.
Yeah,
and his defense creates offense.
I mean, let's
face
it.
That's very true. Most people don't say that.
Harden was an Olay defender. It was just Olay all the way to the hoop, my friend.
Yeah, he's a horrible perimeter defender.
Yeah,
but by metrics, he's one of the best post defenders. So, there's that there. But he was hardly ever in the post. But if he ever switched off, he could.
So what was he like? 2 for 2 in the post on stops or something?
No, he's actually he's really good in the post. He's a big guy.
Right.
Yeah, but on the perimeter, forget about it. He's his feet get stuck.
He's running in quicksand, right?
Oh yeah, worse, man. It's like already solid concrete, and his feet are in there when it dried.
So Dennis, what does the Asian Wonder think of the final playoff stretch here? And who do you think is going to sneak in, and who do you think should be in but will be booted out?
Who's the Asian Wonder? You talking about me? I'm
Oh
like a
yeah.
whole bunch of things now. I'm a mutt. So represent the Spaniards too, because my grandfather's from Spain. So I'm not Latasian because there's nothing in Latin America. But anyway, let's see. I think
I like that, Latasian.
yeah, but I'm not Latasian because I'm not from Latin America. But I can say I'm Hispanic because it's Spanish.
Listen, all you got to do is say you're Latinx because the William loves that.
Latinx.
Even Dennis is like, no. So who do you see sneaking in possibly, and who do you see possibly getting bounced out that would be a surprise on both sides?
Well, in the Eastern Conference, the way it is now, I think it's going to stay the same, where you have the Raptors, the Nets, the Hornets, and the Hawks in the play-in positions. That's going to stay the same. The Wizards are making a run. The New York Knicks are definitely not making a run. However, in the West, it's probably going to be the same thing. You're going to have the four playing right now. I think it's the Timberwolves, Clippers, Lakers, and the Pelicans. They'll all make the play-in. There's not going to be anyone coming from behind, I don't believe. Portland Trail Blazers, they would have been a possibility, I would say, if Dame Lillard was healthy, if Anthony Simons was healthy, but they're not. So the way that it's positioned right now, I think that's the way it's going to end up. There's some ability for the Nets and the Raptors to move up and take that sixth spot over the Cleveland Cavaliers, where they wouldn't have to be in the play-in. But yeah, I don't see it happening because just the way that the season is playing out now, the season's almost over. Everyone's already in a rhythm. It's just going to be how it is now. If you look on the standings right now, that's how I believe it's going to end up being at the end of the regular season.
Well, Dennis, and with that, we want to let our audience know that Dennis is our man and we'll be back right after the final seedings. Well, not right after, but shortly after the final seedings come into play to give us his favorites for the playoffs, to tell you who you're looking at to make the best bets, along with Big John and some prop bets. Big John, any final words for our good friend, Mr. Velasco?
Yeah, I would like Big DV over there to tell me, like, did I notice anybody doing the cover of Slam this week?
Oh yeah, that's baby boy. That's my son. Call him Velasco. He's a Slam intern and he did all the graphics for the NCAA tournament. For
good stuff. I checked it out. It was good stuff.
Yeah.
He did some of the March Madness stuff, right?
Oh yeah.
So when are we? Listen, man. When are you retiring so we can get the kid on the podcast?
I'm like one of those old men that believe they can still bench press 300 pounds. So it ain't ever gonna happen.
So you're one of these old guys that everybody in politics, the youth, complain that they're taking my job because they won't retire. I'm with you, brother.
Yeah, no, it ain't gonna. Look, I know enough where I'm old school. Like, we're gonna be extinct soon. The hardcore sort of manly men. No, don't get me wrong. Props to everybody, but. Just like the old school way of thinking is definitely going away. And yeah, I won't get into politics here or anything. Let me stop there.
We will leave it at that, and we will bid adieu to the Doc Rivers of sports grumblings.
No, we were just like bashing Doc Rivers. I gotta be the Greg Popovich.
So hold on. So comparing you to one of the nicest head coaches in the NBA is bashing Doc Rivers?
Yeah, no, look, no, because we were like totally like saying, Doc Rivers ain't top 10. So are you saying I'm not top 10? There's two
I'm
people.
Saying Doc Rivers is one of the nicest
right
men in basketball.
I'm not top 10. I'm at least 3. Come on, man.
No, I'm saying you're one of the nicest guys we have.
Yeah. I'm a nice guy till you mess around with me.
I can attest to that.
All right. I'm not going to compare you to Greg Popovich. That guy's a dung. How about the Pat Riley?
Oh yeah.
Grumblings.
Hold on a minute. Where's the oil? I got snake back in my head.
There you go. Everybody, Mr. Dennis Velasco. Dennis, until next time.
All right,
Thank you
brother.
so much.
Catch you
Great
next
joining
time,
you,
Dennis.
fellas. Have a great show.
You got it. All right, that was Dennis Velasco, William, coming on once again to give us some NBA knowledge. Always like having Dennis around. He's one of the good ones. And the next time we have him on, maybe we'll have him regale us with some old sports grumblings war stories like we did with
There you
Tim McCullough. He was back in the day. And I'll throw this out for you. A lot of people don't realize it. Dennis came to me when I had started Sports Grumblings, like many of my writers did through email, like, hey, take a look at this. Can I write for your site type of thing, right?
Yeah.
So, I brought Dennis on. He was always a talented writer, knew his stuff. His forte was basketball, of course. But fast forward a couple of months into his gig with us, and I come to find out that, hey, he's a New Yorker. He's from New York. The more I talk to Dennis, and it's one of those things that you would find in a sitcom, come to find out he lived like 3 minutes from where I lived. Like we were basically neighbors and we never knew it until
in a city of 8 million people. What are the odds? Every time we watch a show, I'm always sarcastically joking. Yeah, what are the odds the cop get that tip, or what are the odds the killer's right next door?
Right.
It happens in real life.
And then it happens all the time. So then we got tight on a friendly basis because then we would hang out, we'd go do stuff,
There's a lot to talk about with NFL free agency. We're going to touch on a couple of the major signings over the last couple of days and revisit one. So Big John, talk to me about Von Miller to the Bills. I personally think the fact that and I keep calling them McVay. I had to go back and update some articles today. McDermott and Frazier have yet to take accountability or responsibility for their 13-second debacle. However, actions speak louder than words, and I think they are going to calm the fears of fans going into the season with the Von Miller signing. And why is that?
Well, listen, I love that signing. Look, Von Miller has become the Charles Haley of our time, of this generation. If you want to think of him that way, he's a pass rusher. Pass rushers will always be in demand as long as you can get to the quarterback. If that's the only thing you do on the football field, nothing else, don't give a rat's butt if the guy plays the run, if he's a linebacker who doesn't have to worry about pass coverage, nothing, right?
Right.
The matter also is that Von Miller is a winner. You talk about people who elevate the players around them. Listen, what got the Rams over the hump? You could talk Matt Stafford, and perhaps justifiably so, he played a big role in that victory for the Rams. Don't underestimate what Von Miller did for that team. Not only did he provide presence off the edge, it made Aaron Donald better. It made Leonard Floyd better. It made Jalen Ramsey better. So the fact that Miller, now the Bills, as I think you and I can agree, probably one of the top 3-4 most talented teams, especially on offense. They have one of the great young up and coming quarterbacks. I mean, him and Mahomes and Herbert in the AFC are probably going to be battling each other for the next 10 years, as long as they're healthy, right?
Right.
So I love the Von Miller move to Buffalo. To me, Von Miller was a hired hand to a team like any team that made it to the conference championship. So whether it was the Chiefs, the Bills, the Buccaneers, a team that came just close, that just needs that one little player, whether it's on defense or offense, get a Von Miller, because that guy's a winner. So I love the move for Buffalo. Was it $13 million? Nothing. Pay it. Get him on the team.
It's a 6-year, $120 million deal. It's backloaded. He'll never see the end of it.
Yeah, it's full of voidable years, so you could get out of it after 1 or 2 years. But I
agree. I
love
agree,
that move.
John. It's they don't make it to the Super Bowl without Von Miller. No matter what Von Miller allowed them to do is overcome their mistakes, their errors. That final piece to where we screwed it up here. We got Von Miller. He'll get us that sack and help us get the ball back next go round. And he freed up Aaron Donald. Without Von Miller, I don't think they make it to the big dance to have the refs give them the game.
Yeah, yeah, you keep saying that, of course, but yeah, like I agree with you 100%. I think the Von Miller thing was a fabulous signing, even if it was a rental. It got their ring. That's all. They got him for half a season, and they got
Yeah,
their ring.
and that's his second ring. That's his second ring.
That's his second one, but
the
it was
Haley reference is right on point. Haley was that stud rusher, mercenary. Okay. Raheem Mostert to the Dolphins. Is that how you pronounce his name? Mostert?
Yeah, Mostert.
Raheem Mostert. What I remember about him, the reason I brought him up is, you know, he's looked good, but he's injury prone. However, he had that performance in the NFC Championship game with 220 yards and 4 touchdowns in the win over the Packers that took them to the Super Bowl, where they eventually lost to the Chiefs. But that really, I mean, you can't forget that. How do you see him being used by the Dolphins, and do you think this is a good fit?
Well, I don't know if it's a good fit or not, but it's worth the gamble. Let's put it like that. Because look, I think the more important signing for the Dolphins was Chase Edmonds. Chase Edmonds going to Miami to be their running back, presumably. But I'll tell you one thing: it means Myles Gaskin probably isn't going to be around over there.
Big John, they ran an RB by committee though in San Francisco with their new head coach.
Well, that was going to be my point, right? Okay. The RB by committee, and of course now the head coach of the Dolphins came from San Francisco, right? So the key was that if you recall, William, there was a time when the Denver Broncos seemed to be churning out these 5th, 6th, 4th round running backs, and they would all be 1,000-yard rushers.
Oh yeah,
was it Mike Anderson,
Terrell Davis,
and there was another one. There was a couple of them. It seemed like whoever they put in that backfield. So that means it's one of two things.
That's because of that. What was it called, Big John? The people need to find out that zone,
the zone
blocking,
blocking, right. Which is now largely illegal now, right? But
thank goodness.
Yeah. So my point being is, if you were to just follow the stats, you would say, wow, the coaching staff, the scouting team for the Broncos must be amazing. They know how to draft running backs. No, they love what they call a one and done runner, meaning one cut downhill, no running sideways, one cut downhill.
That's right.
One cut downhill. And they knew that and what did they always put a premium on back then? The offensive line and guys,
the chop blockers,
guys who could.
It was illegal. That was an illegal block.
Right.
It helped with the one cut back.
Right, but it was also that they had to get the right type of lineman to do blocks, right? So if you remember back then, the Broncos linemen weren't these huge behemoths like the Washington Hogs or something, or the Cowboys lines, right? It was these, they were still big men compared to me and you. But they were mobile. They can move around, and that was it. Like the runner didn't have time because they couldn't hold their blocks, right? It would be like one lane, one cut. This is where I'm supposed to go. If it's there, great. If it's not, I'm going down for a 2-yard gain, and that's it, right? So I think the 49ers ran something similar, because if you think about all the guys they've had back there, Tevin Coleman, Elijah Mitchell, Jeff Wilson, Mostert, all these guys.
Well, Big John, though, so what you're saying is Mike McDaniel, the new coach who was the passing coordinator, something like that, but he helped run the offense in San Francisco. He's going to employ that zone one block defense or offense.
Yeah, I think they're going to run the same type of game. That's what he's had success with. So I don't think Mostert is anything more than a chess piece in that.
Do you think he's a value pick come fantasy football draft?
No, not right now. No, I think Edmonds is. I think the one we're missing is Edmonds.
I'm not arguing that. It's just Mostert.
And also, what'll be interesting if they keep say Duke Johnson and let Gaskin go, or see, to me, you'll know the tenor of the running backs by that. Gaskin is much more of a sure-handed 3.5 yards and a cloud of dust guy, and he's pretty good with his hands out of the backfield. He caught a couple of touchdowns last year.
That's why I think the RB by committee is how they'll start. And obviously, and this would have happened in San Francisco. Yeah. In any team, if a player emerges, you run with a hot hand. And that's kind of how I see that.
And look, for the Niners last year, who was their best running back? It was Deebo Samuel. It was a wide receiver, right?
Exactly. So and that's my whole point.
Yeah.
You go with a hot hand, and people don't do RBs by committee by choice. Every team would love a bell cow, but they just, with today's fast and furious NFL and the defense and the hitting, it's next to impossible.
Well, it's also a fallout of the financial implications, right? Because you're not investing as much to get. Most teams are not investing high first round picks or any first round picks on running backs anymore.
Oh yeah,
Most of
look,
them
look at the Super Bowl reps. There was
exactly.
no big name RB on that. And a couple years ago, when there was the kid with the Rams who the ACL tear guy at the end of the
Todd Gurley.
Todd Gurley. He was a big bell cow back who kind of vanished in the second half. Granted, he had injuries, but you're absolutely right. All right, Big John, I hate to push you along here, but Mostert really does not have the greatest of fantasy value, but Russell Wilson does. Look, I'm bringing Russell Wilson up because he had his press conference today. And he had a couple of comments that really struck to the heart of gossip as well as to the heart of his longevity. Right. One, he said that the Seahawks and him wanted this move. They were ready for him to move on. The Seahawks, literally everybody from the head coach to the owner said, no. This was what Russell Wilson wanted. Why do you think Russell Wilson would say that? Because I believe the owners. And you don't give up on a franchise. I have my belief, but I want to hear yours, Big John.
Look, I don't think any of us will really know how that played out, but I think there's been a lot of players with that animosity in Seattle recently. Like, you look at Earl Thomas, right? The way he left Seattle. Very bitter when he got hurt and flipped off his own team on the cart on the way off the field. Sherman as well. So it's not like the Seahawks have been a fountain of brotherly love, right? So that's the one thing to keep in mind. The second thing is Russell Wilson has a bit of a reputation as being this super nice guy. He's married to, what's her name, Ciara. They're like a
very Christian, God-fearing man. He wears it on his sleeve.
Yeah. So I'm not going to question his faith or question his sincerity, but at the very least, that's his image. Right? I'm not saying it's phony, but I'm saying that's his image.
Hey, you know what, John, you bring up a very good point, and I need to state this because the problem with the at least America is they believe Christians, the good God-fearing Christians, are just super nice. There's not a mean bone, or there shouldn't be a mean bone, or they're not Christian. My take, remember the Crusades? You do not have to be that type of person. And I think Russell does have an image to maintain, and that may be why he said it, hoping, hey, we're not going to sit there and say I wanted it out and make them look bad, vice versa. But I do think, excuse me, the Seattle brass took affront to that. But I also believe Russell Wilson wanted out because they were in that quagmire that the Cowboys always find themselves. Not an elite team, but yet they're not a rebuilding process. They're in the middle. And the other thing I want to comment on is being here in Southern Cal, I followed Pete Carroll, and he destroyed the USC program, and he left a lot of bitterness. And I think people run out of patience with Carroll. He left before he was going to be part of the hammer falling. Right. He is the poster child for you need to punish the coach who leaves the program right before the sanctions come down. And that's what I see in Carroll. He just burns bridges, not because they dislike each other. It just runs their course with him. And I think that's what may have happened with Wilson. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me like Pete Carroll is the type of guy who says, look, this is my team. We do things my way. You know, that's all there is to it. So as much as he may have respected Russell Wilson, as much as I think he may have gotten along with Russell Wilson as a person, it's hard to see someone not getting along with Russell Wilson. Look, they got a haul, right? They got a haul. They got picks. They got players they could start right away. If you were going for a rebuild, if you're Seattle, you got a great jump in one season. Now,
that is true. I mean, even Drew Lock. I mean, I think the jury's still out on him. Yeah. I'm sorry, but Denver has not shown me in the past couple of decades they can develop a QB.
Agreed.
They rent their QBs. The final thoughts on him. He is 33 years old. Quote, my goal is to play 10 or 12 more years and hopefully win 3 or 4 more Super Bowls.
Well, that's the problem with someone like Tom Brady, right? Like he's put it in the head of every quarterback that can play into their 40s. And if they can, God bless them. But I will say one thing, and every year I write an article about the analysis, the effects of age and study the trends of the age per position per player in the NFL. And the quarterback position the production has been steadily growing as you go deeper into the 30s.
Right. Do you think part of that is because they now wear skirts? And I'm being serious with that term. That's what a lot of the old school people got today's quarterback. Yeah. I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah, there's no doubt that the relaxation of how much you can kill a quarterback contributes to them being effective.
Remember the play I want to say it was the playoffs, or was towards the end of the season and had playoff implications, of Jim McMahon for the Bears and the Green Bay Packers.
Oh, the guy, the Bears lineman after
the whistle blew, picked him up and slammed him
on his head. Yeah,
right.
It just
shoulder. It was heavily shoulder.
It was like a suplex in the WWE.
Okay, my question to you is: would that guy get kicked out of the league now versus just
be suspended for at least 4 games, if not a year?
I'm thinking easily a year. So do you think he can make it for another 10 to 12 years?
I mean, barring injury, I don't see why not. Maybe not 12, maybe 8 to 10, I would say.
I think any QB that takes their health as seriously as Tom Brady does, and the reason I say can do that. The problem is Tom Brady, when it came to his health, how he ate, all that, he was an outlier.
Oh, he's maniacal. He's maniacal about his health and his nutrition.
I'm not a Tom Brady fan, to be quite frank, but he's earned every accolade he's done.
Agreed. I'm not a big fan either as a New Yorker, but yeah.
Let's go back to that then. We just briefly touched on Tom Brady. We're in the free agency segment here. Some quick comments on his unretirement. Does that help keep free agents in Tampa Bay? Does that help lure bigger free agents in Tampa Bay? And where do you see him falling with fantasy football drafts? And a lot of questions, and are the Bucs the favorite from the NFC to make the Super Bowl now?
I don't know if they're the favorite, but they're one of the favorites. And what does it mean that he's coming back? Look, it's not like he had an average year last year.
No.
When he retired, he was at the top of his game, one of his best seasons. So it's not like he had a decline in skills.
He's still at the top of his game, brother.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So is Gronk coming back? That's another one, right? I mean, now that Brady's back, will Gronk come back? I know he said he's willing to separate from him, but we'll see.
Will Antonio Brown come?
No, they need to replace Antonio Brown, obviously, right?
Chris Godwin isn't a replacement for him.
No, I take it as a given that he had 3 great receivers. He had Evans, Godwin, and Brown at one point.
Right. You're right. Evans could be a number 1.
Right. So he has 2 good ones, which is 1 more than Rodgers has, for example, right?
So and Rodgers doesn't even have that one right now.
Right. And look, they're not having back the entire team, because for the first time in history, the Bucs brought back their entire starting squad after a Super Bowl win, right? That's never happened before. Now they get him back. So we'll see what happens. But look, they already picked up Shaq Mason, right?
Why did that happen that they were able to bring back their whole team? I mean, I'm being rhetorical, but
we know why, because Brady got paid, but he took a team-friendly contract to allow them to sign key players. Because at his age, look, how much more money realistically can Brady look for?
But isn't that the same question for Aaron Rodgers? I mean, they're not that far off.
Look, you would think that it would be the opposite, right? You would think that the guy who has 7 rings would be, just pay me and I'll do it. Right? But you would think that the guy without 7 rings, he only got 1 ring. You would think if Rodgers would be like, okay, maybe I'll take a team-friendly contract so I could keep Davante Adams, who, by the way, it says he's not going to play under the franchise tag. And FYI, if you follow Sports Grumblings on Twitter, you would have seen our tweet highlighting that Davante Adams is saying, when am I going to get mine? 12 got his. He goes, I love him, but he did me dirty, basically, right?
Well, I wouldn't say that he did him dirty as much as maybe the perception of what they thought he would do. Look, I don't fault Aaron Rodgers, but there are ramifications. And part of the ramifications is what Davante Adams wants, his payday. And for the record, if I'm Davante Adams, I hold out for as long as possible, because unlike QBs, his shelf life is much shorter. And when receivers and RBs start to deteriorate, it goes quick, because you cannot teach speed,
right?
And so I hope he does hold out and gets what he wants, because and we'll talk about this maybe or maybe not. But there's a lot of history with Aaron Rodgers and how he's treated his fellow players and all that. And when the time is right, nothing sinister. It's just when Aaron Rodgers gets to the back of the news cycle again.
And by the way, William, to your point, today breaking news: Julio Jones was cut by the Titans a year after they traded for him.
That's next on my
all right,
list.
fair enough.
Okay, Julio Jones is a post June 1st cut. Since you threw it at me, I'm gonna take.
Go ahead, take it, baby. Take it, baby.
I never like to trade. When it comes to hamstring injuries and receivers, it never gets better. It gets progressively worse. And if they're not injured, they're thinking about getting injured, and their numbers tend to dip.
Especially at that age. Especially
exactly.
Yeah.
Julio Jones had his worst season. He had the season I predicted. He had the season, if I owned him on any dynasty leagues, I would have made a killing trading him away.
Sure, I agree.
And it was wasted money. They could have used on somebody else, and not just for the receiver position. Maybe they could have built around Laura. I mean, hell, it's not that their offensive line was that bad. It's just maybe they needed a better one to give an average QB even more time to throw. But the point is Julio Jones was a 32-year-old old man when he got to that team, and now he's a 33-year-old older man. He finished the season with 48 targets for 434 yards and 1 TD, all career lows.
Well, he was hurt all year too. He was.
But hold on, he's always hurt. So being hurt is a given for Julio Jones.
Well, let's face it. Also, Julio Jones. It always pains me being old enough to remember when these guys were the young studs, right? Julio Jones was one of the greatest receivers I ever saw play. He was a stud, man.
Sure, but when healthy though, his
agreed.
Were there from the get-go.
Yeah, the last 2-3 seasons though, you're right. It's obvious. Look, you know who the parallel is to him? AJ Green. AJ Green, when he got hurt on the Bengals, hurt his knee. His career was basically over. People were like, I saw a lot of fantasy experts predict, oh, now that he's with the Cardinals, he's playing opposite. It was the exact same situation as Julio Jones had playing opposite AJ Brown. AJ Green was playing opposite DeAndre Hopkins. And people said, hey, in those WR2 roles, they're going to thrive. They're going to do this, going to do that. Sorry, it didn't happen for either one of them. You're right. At that age, William, you're coming off injuries to your legs, any type of injury, an Achilles, a knee, an ACL, an MCL, LCL.
Big John, 10 years. 10 years, only 4 seasons he was able to play 16 games.
Right. I agree with you. But but that was because he took a lot of punishment. Oh man, some of those hits.
Maybe so. But when it's and this is the ugly part of football that fans don't like to hear. When it's a business, and as when I'm doing projections or used to do, I factored in injuries. I created a simple formula that predict how many games they would miss because there came a point where I'm like, look, when this player is missing anywhere from 2 to 5, 6 games a year, that's got to be calculated in the projections. People are no longer insulating us or keeping us from criticism when we go, well, our projections are for 16 games. Yeah, but he's only played 12 for the last 4, So the Julio Jones, that has to be taken into consideration. And it's a reason why the Titans were sitting at home.
Agreed.
This year. In fact, and he's also going to be a post June 1st cut. The Titans saved $9.5 million in cash and salary cap space, and the move spreads the cap hit over 2 years, leaving $8.4 million in dead money. So the final caveat before we move on from Julio Jones is he's still going to be a nightmare for this team. $8.4 million in dead money is not chump change.
It's not chump change, but they're better off getting rid of him now, saving the $9 million now, seeing if they could get somebody else in there, but I don't know who's left at this point.
All right, Big John. Let's move to our pop culture segment of the day. And we have 2 quick topics.
Sure.
We're going to stick around with the NFL free agency and just call it the NFL pop culture segment. Carl Nassib. Now, the reason I bring Carl Nassib out is because he was the first openly gay NFL player to come out. Nothing but love and support.
First active player.
Yes, exactly. Right. There have been players who have been retired and have come out. And Sam, what was Sam's last name?
Michael Sam.
Michael Sam never actually made the roster.
Right. He came out as gay in college, so he got drafted as an openly gay player, but he really didn't stick around. And there was
just not that good.
And there was that the lineman for the Vikings that came out afterwards. I can't pronounce his name. It's one of those Samoan names, and I have trouble.
Right. I know you're talking about.
But he came out afterwards, yeah.
But this was on a player who actually came
Yeah.
out during his playing days and actually has some skills. The problem is he's an edge rusher.
Yeah.
And he earned close to $8 million, and that was just too rich for the Raiders. He was a 3rd round pick by the Browns in 2016, played with them for 2 years before going to Vegas. In 6 seasons, he's compiled 22 sacks, and that's approximately 5 a season. Those are solid numbers.
Solid, very solid.
But for a pass edge rusher, I think teams are probably looking for a little bit more once they get into the range of we got to pay this guy.
Right.
Your thoughts on him being the first openly gay player, and your thoughts on him with his NFL actual play, and if he'll stick around in the league?
Yeah. So let's address his play first, just as a player. He's a solid player. Look, I mean, the reason they had to cut him, I'm almost positive, is because they signed Chandler Jones. So between Chandler Jones and Max Crosby, now they have those real terrorizing bookends, right? So, but they had to pay Chandler Jones. They have to pay Crosby. That means 2 guys they had to get rid of who were solid players. And Ngakwe and Ngakoue got traded, right? So they got rid of his salary cap number today.
Right.
And then they release Nassib and they save his salary number. So they, in order to get the upgrade of Chandler Jones, and Chandler Jones is an upgrade, they had to clear out the space. So, bring 1 defensive lineman on, they traded Ngakoue for Rock Ya-Sin to help out in the secondary.
There you go. You had to look that up with the definition, how to pronounce it, didn't you?
Yeah, Ya-Sin, Rock Ya-Sin, right. So, but now the fact that he was gay, and look, I don't, a person's sexuality has never, ever occurred to me to be any type of factor. But the truth of the matter is, other people use it for various purposes, both, as if you want to use the term wokeness, and the conservatives use it for other reasons. So it becomes a hotbed issue to be used politically. I haven't really heard.
Actually, I don't think this becomes a hotbed issue. Look, conservatives don't have any issue with gay. Some of the fundamentalists do. But as I tell them, hey, I'd love to be a fly on the wall the day judgment comes to you, because the Bible says something about casting the first stone.
You're not like most conservatives then.
Really, I am. You take the minority and make it the majority.
No, let's, you're
When's
not.
the last time you went to a conservative meeting?
You're not being forthright, William. Let's face it.
I am being very forthright.
Very forthright. The Boberts,
I've had those battles.
The Boberts and the Taylor Greens and these people, they're all pretty much anti-gay. If they're not anti-gay in terms of the person, they're
I have been called anti-gay because I don't want pedophiles in teaching. I don't want pedophilia being taught in school.
William,
and I've been called anti-gay.
William, there's an entire state that has proposed that the word gay not be used.
No, they haven't. Florida has not proposed that. Have you actually read the law? It's a yes or no.
Tell me about it. Tell me about it.
Yeah. The law does not state it's about don't say gay. The law states it's about you cannot teach about grooming and those types of issues to, like, if I remember correctly, 3 to 5-year-olds, or it's that age group where you shouldn't be teaching anything of that nature. I don't believe you should be talking heterosexuality except for a scientific process in school. That's a parent's job. But I've been called anti-gay, or I've been called, is it anti-gay because of that? No, I haven't.
Well, a lot of people are anti-gay about it because...
And a lot of leftists in the Black and Latino cultures, of which I've gone in and out of those cultures. And blacks at a rate of about 95 to 98% vote Democrat. Right. So I could easily say, well, it's a Democrat party, but I know it's not. This is something that you look at individually and then culturally to some aspect, and then as a whole.
You're right.
But the other side does it. They look at it as a whole and they deem everybody as that. Why? Because they love doing that. They take pleasure in doing that in some reason.
No.
Because it's an easy stone to cast.
No, it's not.
It's a righteous stone to cast. Yeah, it is. As a conservative, no. You're not. You're misunderstanding me. It's a righteous stone to cast because there should be nobody who should be anti-gay. At the end, God will judge us for whatever reason. And so, like I've told you, I look at it this way: heterosexuals are the hardtop cover that Detroit produces. Homosexuality is like the convertible. It's just a different car.
No,
You know?
I appreciate your position. I'm not questioning your sincerity, but to hold the position. And by the way, I agree with you 100%. There are Democrats / liberals who are very much anti-gay because of their culture or their religion. So typically speaking, if you're religious, whether you're a religious Muslim, a religious Christian, I don't think Judaism has as much a problem with it. But if you're a
Yeah,
religious
the
Muslim,
Greek Orthodox do. I mean,
well,
the Orthodox Jews do.
maybe, I'm not sure. To be honest with you, that might be the case. I'm not familiar enough to be honest with you. But my point being is any conglomeration of a religious group, and for example, Latinos tend to be very heavily Catholic. The black voting bloc tends to be either born again or charismatic or whatever, but they tend to be Christians.
Culture where we're brought up in a machismo society is what it boils down to.
Well, Latinos, I agree with you that Latino men, yes, absolutely. The machismo thing, as much as people goof on it, is very much a thing.
No. I guess I apologize. Take a step back.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the country. I'm not talking about Latinos in the States.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking about, and remember, all new Latinos from Mexico that are coming through the border. They're coming. So I'm not talking Americans. A lot of the third generation, or a lot of first, second, even first generations. Technically, I would be a first generation Latino, because even though my mom didn't come up as an immigrant, she came up because she married my father, and Puerto Rico is a territory, so he technically wasn't an immigrant. They were the first of my family, so I would be a first generation.
You're a 1.5 generation.
There you go. But my point is, even I'm the asterisk with the first generations. It usually takes the second and third generations
To move past that. Yes,
yeah.
I agree with you.
But it bothers me that you say that, not you personally, but because it's not true. Since 2015, I've battled in these trenches. It's what is it, what's that saying? It's the tail wagging the dog, or the minority few
the
who tend to be the loudest.
Wagging, you think it's
yeah,
the
who
dog
tend to be
wagging
loudest.
the tail.
Because I've actually met a lot of Christians who go, I don't care for homosexuality, but at the end of the day, I'm going to be judged. It's kind of like the Tea Party. When I became active in 2015, I saw that the Christian arm of the Republican Party took over local Tea Parties, and that's how they became so Christianized. Because remember, when the Tea Party started, it was about money.
Yeah, it was about taxes. Yeah,
taxes. But anyway, we are digressing. I think Carl Nassib may not have as many destination choices because of what I said about the locker room culture. The league's made up of about 70% African-American players. Like Latinos, our culture is not as progressive. People may not want to hear that. You call me whatever name you want, but it's the truth. So openly they'll say the right things,
yeah.
But privately they probably won't want him. And the team's going to look at their locker room culture and then what city they're in. So for example, and I'm not accusing Charlotte of anything, but a city in Charlotte may look at Nassib differently than the Rams would, or that. And people, I'm speculating here.
Look, urban cities, and again, you're going to say I'm overgeneralizing. Let's face it, he's not going to play for the Atlanta Falcons. He's not going to play for the for the Carolina Panthers. He's probably not going to play for any of the Florida teams. If you're worried about the city, right? Those are the ones that you have to have trouble with. He's probably not going to play up in Green Bay or something like that. He's going to end up in one of the New York markets, the Philly market, Chicago, LA, San Francisco, maybe Seattle, since that's a very liberal town, right? So, yeah, but I think he has value as a player. Yes, he's not a premier edge rusher, but I think if someone signs him for $3-4 million on a prove-it deal, where they can use 6, maybe 7 sacks opposite someone else.
Here's the problem. He's only 28. And so I don't think he's going to want a $3 to $4 million deal, but if they can make it a $7 million deal in terms of bonuses,
like incentives.
I think,
yeah,
incentives. I think he is the perfect fit, whether it's back in Oakland, whether it's in Buffalo. The Rams could be taking a look at him with the loss of Von Miller for depth. He is the type of player that a Tom Brady salary cap friendly team can go out and sign in what I would classify as quality depth.
I agree with you. He definitely can still play in the league, and hopefully he'll find a home. Hopefully.
All right, let's close it out. And I'm going to throw it to you because this is a bit after my time. May he rest in peace. Razor Ramon, the Cuban American WWE star, has passed.
Yes.
Big John, we're both big wrestling fans from our youth. Any comments?
Look, Razor Ramon, real name Scott Hall, was one of the really innovative characters that came along. Scott Hall started out, he was known as Big Scott Hall, wrestling in the AWA up in Minnesota. Of course, it wasn't until the marketing genius of Vince McMahon got a hold of him, turned him into Razor Ramon. Now, most people know this, some may not. Razor Ramon was a character based on the Scarface version of Al Pacino's version of Scarface.
No way, did not know that. Of course, that was after my time.
Right, and if you notice, like, if you listen to Scott Hall's speech patterns when he's doing Razor Ramon, he sounds like this. You know, he tried to emulate Pacino's Cuban, Miami Cuban accent, right?
Yeah.
He was the bad guy, right? And I don't mean that
the heel. They called it the heel in wrestling.
Right. Not only was the heel, but his nickname was the bad guy. He would come out and one of his catchphrases are "Bad times don't last forever, but the bad guy does."
That's right. That's right. That was a memo. They made that into a memo when he passed on.
Yeah, in the meme. Yeah. So he was one of those guys. What a lot of people don't realize is that from the technical perspective of wrestling, the craft of wrestling, he was a fantastic wrestler, technical wrestler. He knew all the holds. He was 6'7", but he moved around the ring like a flyweight. And when you think of all the things that he did in his career, he had the first ladder match with Shawn Michaels, considered one of the
God. So he was the beginning of the true destruction of their bodies, you know?
Yeah, he was a really, really, really top performer. Then, of course, the second act of his career, which was probably the biggest, you know, when a storyline in wrestling is called an angle. It was probably the biggest angle of our lifetimes, was the NWO, when he joined Big Sexy Kevin Nash and Hulk Hogan, and they formed the NWO.
That's right.
Now it was cool to be the bad guys. You know, it always used to be that the good guys were supposed to win, right? And even when he was Razor Ramon, he would come out and he'd be the bad guy, and he wasn't supposed to win. He was, you know, he was the heel, like you said. But when he joined the NWO, it was cool to be the bad guy. It was cool to lie and cheat. And of course, the funny part, if you watch that era of his career, he slowly lost his Cuban accent. He forgot to do the Cuban accent. So at one point, he just stopped putting on the accent and he just spoke in his regular voice, which you've ever heard him. He had a very deep voice and Big Scott Hall. One of the things, of course, that obviously contributed to his death, and he died on March 14th, and he had 3 heart attacks, basically.
Right. I was going to bring that up because some people are going to just immediately say steroids.
Yeah, I don't think it was steroids. His demons were drinking and drugs, to the point that at one stage in his career, they actually made an angle out of his drinking, where he ran to the ring and then stumbled off the thing and fell into the audience while he was carrying a beer. They were making fun of a real life problem that he had.
That was part of the criticisms of Vince McMahon. There's nothing sacred to him. Right. I'm going to get help for some of his wrestlers. Some of the stories are that he just used and abused and dumped these wrestlers.
Well, that's some of the stories. Some of the other stories are actually that the WWE has instituted wellness programs.
Now they have.
Well, it's been for a couple of years now. And they've paid for people to go to rehab, you know. So
no. That's recent. Remember, Vince McMahon goes back to what, the 70s when he started.
Between him and his father, it goes back.
So that's recent. I'm talking about the 80s. Even some of these stars.
Yeah. No. There's, excuse me. There's no doubt that there was some of that going on. But anyway, so Scott Hall, rest in peace. One of the great characters. I mean, and when you say rest in peace in his case, it probably is the case, because he suffered a lot in his life, especially later. At one point, I think he was accused of murder before he got into wrestling.
That's right. He did have a criminal career.
Yeah, there's a 30 for 30 on it. And if you get the chance, you should see it. But yeah, so
he was also friends with Nash, Kevin Nash,
close friends with Nash and with Sean Waltman, known as X-Pac. Very close friends. They did all that together. So rest in peace, Scott Hall.
Rest in peace, Scott. Razor Ramon. I love saying that. Razor Ramon. Oh, you Ramon. This is mom. Oh, you Ramon. No matter how tough he is.
I can definitely roll my R's with him to Ramon.
There you go. And there we have it, America. Thank you for tuning in, and we shall catch you on the next go around.
Peace out, baby.